So for this video, I'm going to show Azure Site Recovery for virtual machines. And I kind of said it in one of the previous videos when I said Azure Backup Service, but the difference between site recovery and backup is, well, I'm going to expand on that, is that site recovery is used for failover. So imagine you have a couple virtual machines in East US and they go down. You, by using site recovery, you're able to have those two virtual machines spin up or fail over into a different region, let's say Europe, whatever, West Europe, and then they're able to be spun up in a matter of minutes rather than just using normal backup where first you got to do the backup and then recover from the backup, which will take hours. So it's a lot faster to fail over. And so the way it works is, the site recovery mobility service extension is installed on the source virtual machine. Then continuous replication occurs via the cache storage account. And then, so let's say in the East US it goes down, your disk storage and your VMs, then the cache storage replicates your disk storage to like Central US, which is the target. And your VMs, a new VNet will be created in the target, and it'll be Central US region, and your VMs will be spun up there. And if they're part of availability set, then there'll be a new availability set there. If they're part of availability zone, the source ones, then they'll be in the same zone in a new region. So basically, it's just for replication to a different region for faster, recovery. So when the data is processed in the target region, crash consistent recovery points are generated every 5 minutes, and the new ones, they're retained. Everything that's in the new region is retained by default for 24 hours. So anyway, I'm going to show that. I just want to explain it all for now. So anyway, first thing I did is I just created a Windows virtual machine, and inside of it I'm installing IIS, and I'm doing what I like to do is create default.html file, and I'm going to save it into www root, and then I'm going to show that this works, and then I'll continue from there once it's done installing. Okay, it's done. Close. Save as. Default.html. Alright. Now, there it's a web server slash. Okay, that works. Now, time to, so let's go to disaster recovery under operations. And right now, actually, we're in, where are we? East US. So it's going to put, it usually likes to pick a region close to it. So our target region, we'll just do West US. And anyway, let's just say next, advanced settings. So just a little wizard. It's gonna keep it the same subscription, and it's gonna create a new resource group to put in for the new virtual machine that's gonna create. It's gonna go into there, and it's gonna create a new VNet for the virtual machine to go into. And I'm gonna just keep the same availability. But if you like I said, if you had a set before, then you could do that to our zone. Then you can do that. Proximity placement, we don't need that now. And so it's going to create a new cache storage account that's going to actually go to the source VM, because the data gets transferred to there, and then when it wants to do the failover, then the cache storage account sends it over to that new region. So first it's going to say, it's going to replicate this disk, but since I didn't have any, it's going to create a new one. So let's look at the replication settings. So it's going to create a new replication policy, new recovery services vault, new vault resource group, extension settings. So it's going to create a new automation account, and it's going to create an agent on this demo VM. And so basically the agent here will take all the changes that happens to this demo VM, put it into the cache storage account, and then the storage account will replicate it onto the target, into the target region. And it's automated, update settings, the updates that the agent does, for the data, new data, is automatic because you're allowing it to manage it. But if you want to, you can manually do it yourself. But I'm going to let Azure handle it. So I guess that's everything. It's going to create the vault in the target region. It's going to create the cache account in the source, and then replicate it. So anyway, let's review. Looks good, and start the replication. And I'll come back when it's ready. Alright, it's ready. It's created everything. So let's just look at some of the stuff it created. So let's look at West US. So we created disk. Let's look at the storage account, the recovery services account that I created West US. So our other stuff was in East, and now it's in West. Let's look at replicated items. And you can see that the virtual machine that we initiated everything on, the site recovery, is here. So in the status it says 0% synchronized, and we gotta wait for it to finish, and then it'll change to enabling protection. And when it changes there, that means it's transferring everything to the VM is transferring everything to the recovery vault here in the West US, like the destination region of West US. So I just refresh it, it's 45%. So anyway, I'll come back when it's done, and we'll click it, and we'll be able to view it and see what steps is happening when it's enabling protection. Alright, so it's done. And status protected. So I can't even, if it was enabling protection, I clicked it here, it would show what's happening. Like it would say, prerequisites check for enabling protection, status successful, installing mobility service and preparing target, enable replication, starting initial replication, updating to provider states. So it looks like it did all that because now it's protected. So it's healthy, it's protected, but last successful test failover, it was never performed successfully. So if we want, we could do failover, and that will actually take the data in the VM and replicate it to, make the new VM in the new region. So it's in East US, so it'll change it to West US, but that hasn't happened yet. We just got the data ready, but didn't actually fail over to the new VM yet. So also, if you go here on the side tab, compute and network, you would see that there's you could change some of these settings. Like if you wanted to change the size of the new target VM, then you could do that. So you just click edit, and you can do that here. But so it's not gonna let you actually do anything. Well, you could do it now, or you could just do it after you do the failover. Alright, so let's actually do that failover. So click it. So you gotta choose a recovery point. And basically it's just gonna, the recovery services fault in the West US is gonna use the replicated data that it got and create a virtual machine out of it in West US, and by using, I'm gonna just, it says to do a test one first, but you know, I'm just not doing anything. So you could choose which, you know, recovery point you want. RTO, recovery time objective, RPO, recovery point objective. So basically this means like this is the goal of not losing that much is amount of data, and this is like amount of time since it failed. So it doesn't matter which, I'm just gonna say shut down, and it's gonna, you see, move it from east to west. Click OK, and it's starting it. And it should take a couple minutes, but let me show you what test failover does. I'm not gonna actually do it, but it's the same thing. You choose recovery point, but this time you just choose the VNet. Maybe I should have done that, but that's what it does. So while we're waiting, it should take a couple minutes. Alright, it's done. So now if you just refresh it, you can see that you can't do failover tests, so it's working. And let's go check over here in virtual machines, and you'll see it created a new one in the West US. So we could go to that, and by default it doesn't create the public IP address with it, but you know, if you create like a PowerShell script to, you know, associate one with it to be on the same, you know, then you could do that. But since I didn't do that, we're just gonna manually create one. Go to network interface, IP configurations, click the IP config one, gonna say associated, choose one. We don't have one, so we'll create a new one. New and that's fine. And then associate, yep, save. That's creating it, and it should be ready pretty quick. Alright, so it's done. Now we could go back to our new virtual machine overview. So here's the public IP address to get, West US. Look, it's different from this one, 13.68. So let's copy that. So here's what it is before, you know, the IIS and then our notepad file. And anyway, so here's going to be the new one that we created. So it has IIS on it, so it was able to replicate. And then, let's see, and it also has this, so it replicated all the data successfully. That's just a way to verify it. Anyway, so that's what it does. So when you're done with it, then you could just go, let's go back to recovery services vault. So this one, site, and you go back to replicated items, to this one, and if it was a test failover, then you could just do cleanup test failover. But since I did a real failover, then I could say disable or reprotect or even change the recovery point. So I'm just going to disable. and you can say Y. And then it's going to remove the replicated item. So the last thing I just want to say is, like, if we do a real failover, and let's say I change this whatever default.html to something else, and I change the recovery point to be the most recent one, yeah, it's gonna do that because it's deleting right now. Then it will, it'll bring the new change with it. It'll update it because I chose the most recent recovery point. So it's gonna replicate whatever you want it to replicate. You just have to make sure you choose the right recovery point, and it'll bring all the changes from the first VM to the replicated VM in the new region. And that's Azure Site Recovery Service.